let's start. So again, my name is Axel, and I am a Scrum trainer. I live here in Brazil. I have a technical background. So I'm from IT and for more like 20 plus years. And I've been traveling the world as a consultant, Java programming and architecture stuff and all the fancy things. And I've seen quite a lot of things happening. So how did I end up being this trainer? So I became interested in this weird way of managing things, like this crazy Scrum thing. And I decided I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And by doing that, I kind of started to like teaching it. And it's an inspiring way of working. And this is why I thought this, well, if the typical project management stuff is boring, then the Scrum thing, that's kind of inspiring. And this is why I like to teach this. And so we train this, you might have heard of the certified Scrum Master. Right. So the thing is, if you look at the history of the certification from Scrum Alliance, they were always focusing on the management side. So in the beginning, you had this surge of popularity of the Scrum Master thing. Everybody wanted to become a certified Scrum Master, right? Like, oh, and it's always been very difficult to really understand that role. And sometimes people think, oh, I'm a developer, and when I'm growing up, I'm going to be a project manager or a Scrum Master, as if that was a hierarchy. And that's the first big mistake people make. And because there is not this hierarchy. I'm going to talk about this a little bit in a second. But anyway, so Scrum Alliance focused on these Scrum Master trainings. And then, okay, how about the product? Okay, product owner. And you see that companies, they invest in these roles because they think, yeah, that's important stuff. This is kind of the management side of this. And nobody invested in the poor developers. And they think, oh, when we invest, we train a Scrum Master, we train a product owner, and the rest will be like, they will do it by themselves. And that's a big mistake. And I can speak from experience because I'm a developer and I've lived through, through the trenches. I've seen it. And there's a lot of things that these guys have to figure out. And Scrum Alliance also became aware of this, that this is a gap. And so I joined the committee of Scrum Alliance that try to reformulate that training specifically for the developers now. And so now we develop, maybe let me share your screen with you guys quickly. So this is what you see here is the mirror board. And so what we did, in the Scrum Alliance, we reformulated this journey, this certification path for developers. So we have the entry level certification, which is CSD, where I'm going to talk a little bit about the content. And then you have the ACSD, the advanced CSD. And I think in Brazil, I'm the only ACSD trainer. And then you have, and the next step is you have to prove certain level of experience. And then you have this CSP, which is the professionalized certification stuff, where it's more about like the technical leadership aspect and stuff. But anyway, so here what you see on the board, you have the learning objectives of the CSD, right? And here the advanced, you can have a look, what are the specific topics that we're talking about? And you see they're all listed here nicely, right? And here you are. So anyway, so let me show you this quickly. And that's really easy too. So what you have to do, click on that link. Let me provide the link again. So you have to click on that link. I'm going to put this one. It's mirror. So I'm going to share the screen again. So this is where we will find, right? So I've posted some screenshots of what happens in the training. So, and now the first thing you have to do. So what you see on your left side, you see a toolbox, right? And there is this one most important tool, which is the sticky note. You know, for agilists, for guys for Scrum, you need that one. The sticky note is the most important thing. So just click on it, and then you get a sticky, and then you just click on where you want to put the sticky. And I would like you to put the following information. First of all, your name. So my name is Axel. So I'm putting Axel here, right? Then put some information that you would like to share. So I'm personally curious about your technology, your technology stack. So for example, I am a Java guy and it's 20 plus years of experience, whatever. So just take a couple of minutes to get comfortable with that tool. And then the next step is to take the sticky and put it on that board according to 2 dimensions. You have the dimension of agility. So if you consider yourself very experienced in agility, please put yourself to the right. But if you think that you are a beginner, then please put yourself to the left. Right, so this is the dimension of agility. And how about the dimension of your IT experience? So if you think like 20 years, oh, I'm quite experienced, so I'm going to put myself more or less here, right? Because 20 years of experience and I'm quite experienced in Scrum, so I'm going to put myself here. So please position yourselves and don't be shy. It's not the time to be humble. We have to understand where we're at. I want to know if we're going to talk about like initial stuff or should we tackle some more advanced stuff. So it's your time. I'm here for you. So what I see that we have a couple of experienced guys and we have some beginners, and that's okay. That's cool because the training course, the beginning of our journey starts with being a beginner. That's how it is. So, okay, cool. So let me zoom a little bit. So let me see what I see. So we see testers. That's cool because we need testers in our Scrum team. And so we have a Scrum Master. Okay, we need Scrum Masters, of course. Then we have a business analyst. Okay, we can talk about that. Then we talk Kyle. So that was a Java guy. That's cool. What else do we have? UX, UI. That's also cool. Okay. So then we have teacher. Okay, cool. So we have business analysts. We have a couple of Scrum Masters, UI and UX guys. So in the training, we are using that tool extensively, right? So we do all our simulations or teaching, we even program together. So in the training, we have 6 main topics. First of all, we have, of course, here the basics, right? We're talking about Scrum and Scrum, how it really works, right? Scrum Alliance is really founded by founding fathers of Scrum. So these are the guys that really, they define what Scrum really is. You see a lot of strange things happening in the wild. We are teaching Scrum as it should be, right? Big part of the training is really teaching Scrum how it really works. The events, the roles, the artifacts, and how it all works. So another thing that we have to talk about is how does it work? How does collaboration works in Scrum teams, right? So we have to talk about team dynamics and collaboration. And then we are talking about the technical stuff, but because we need to talk about specific technical skills that we have to pick up to be successful with Scrum. So we're talking about design and architecture. So what is a good architecture? That is, what are the aspects of architecture that we have to take care of if you want to be successful in the long run, right? So we have to talk about techniques. the flexibility, the agility in code. And that means, how do we refactor? What is refactoring? What is all that stuff, right? And then we have to talk about test-driven development. Test-driven development, that's really a cool thing. And we are actually going to program together. And we are going to, I'm going to help you, for these guys who never did this, we are going to this step-by-step, TDD. And people always think, oh, that's that black magic stuff. It's not really, but it takes some time to wrap your head around these strange concepts. And then we have to talk about integrating continuously. So please take a sticky and let's do the same thing again. So architecture, for example, how to create an evolutionary architecture. For example, that might be like, oh, how do you do that? How can you deliver architecture each sprint? But that's crazy. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about membership. How are the roles in Scrum? That's an interesting topic. Okay, how does a Scrum Master utilize this CSD? Okay, cool. QA, what types of projects? Yes, these are questions that we're going to answer. Refactoring, yes. So refactoring might be a strange thing for people who are not coding, but everybody has to refactor, even UI guys. Yeah. The process in general, okay, simplifying TDD. Yes, we are going to simplify, explain TDD. Yeah, so how to introduce TDD? Yeah, that's maybe the biggest challenge. It's not really TDD per se, but how can you introduce change? You know, it's not really about TDD or not TDD. Okay, CI/CD. Oh yeah, hardware, that's a tough one. Yeah. Architecture, prioritization, technique, conflict resolution. Yeah. Project monitoring, interesting. Okay. Right. So, so there are many different questions, and most of these questions will be answered in the training. How about we talk about Scrum just in general? So, like in non-technical terms, how would you explain Scrum to someone? Like, do you think, for example, that Scrum is it really a new way of working, or is it an old way of working? To understand, let's make a small discussion of an example, a real world example of a Scrum team. Let me start, and I'm going to try to tell you a story graphically. So here we have some space and a story about gardening. So let's imagine the following case. Imagine that I am a client, right? That's me. And I have this vision. I want to have a garden, right? So, for example, so I have this strange idea, right? You know, this kind of vision. When you create a product, you start generally by having a vision of a product. Isn't that true? Right? Product, to create a new product, that's different from just delivering a project. Product is always something new, something that you're creating, right? And let's imagine that so I have this vision of a garden. So I'm imagining like a garden. What could be in a garden? What would you put in a garden, for example? What are things that you have in your garden? Yeah, garden. So different plants. So maybe here some, some, oh, you know, when you have like, what's it called? A fence. So maybe you want a fence, right? So I put a fence here, kind of a fence. And that's all my imagination, right? So, and then we have some plants, some big plants in the corner, like corner plants. And then, you know, what we like here in Brazil, it's kind of a water fountain, something like, you know, something construction. and you have some water, so a fountain, so some water stuff. And then you have some stones that give you a way to walk, stones and stuff. So I'm kind of collecting things I would like to have, right? And I say, okay, I as a client, I don't have the time to actually do this. So I'm going to call the guys, a team that know how to build actually a garden, the specialists, all these guys. And so I call these guys, right? So this is our team. So you have some guys who know how to prepare the soil, someone who knows how to cut the grass or seed grass and install water fountains and all these things. And so I talked to these guys and I explained what I would like to have. And they asked me, oh, what do you want to have? And so we all put this into a list. That's just a list. And so these guys, talking with these guys, they realize that I don't exactly know what I want. I have an idea. It's kind of maybe it's a little bit like confusing maybe. But so they asked me what I want and they put this in a list and they asked me, what's the most important thing to do? And I say, okay, that might be the order. So the fence is really important to me and I would like to have grass. So I put this here. So and these guys, they think, okay, since Axel doesn't really know what to do, let's start by working in weeks, right? We start in weeks and then we show him whatever we've finished at the end of the week and see if we are right, okay? Simple. So this is what these guys do. So here it's the team, right? And when they start on Monday, let's say they start on Monday, what is the first thing that you would do when you want to deliver something for Friday? So how are you going to start your work? Tell me. I mean, this is really basics. Don't think about Scrum technology. What do you do? This is like totally normal, right? So let's plan a little bit. So this is what we do. So we just have a planning meeting, right? We plan. And at the end of that planning meeting, let's call it planning meeting. And at the end, what do we have? We have a kind of a plan, right? So we can say, okay, we have to do this and that. And this should be done on Friday. We hope that we get it done on Friday, right? So, and what's going to happen on Friday then? Imagine we're starting on Monday and then they work and on Friday they want to show it to me. Or let's say, and then so we have a demo, let's call it the review. Because there is a difference between just demoing and reviewing. What's the difference? Why do I not just want to demo something? I am there. I have this confusing idea of what I want. On Monday, they say, we are going to deliver, let's say, at the end of the planning, they say, oh, we are going to deliver this here. It's kind of a goal, right? They say, oh, let's try that. We want to deliver the fence. And we want to deliver the grass. So that's the plan. That's what we imagine as a goal for that week. So what would be the focus for Friday then? Exactly. So I'm Axel, I'm the sole stakeholder, but that's okay. So I want to know. So if they wanted to try to put the fence and the grass, and then they show it to me. And they are reviewing it together with me. So I'm going and look at the fence and say, oh, that's the fence I like. Maybe I'm not happy, but I can tell them, okay, but the grass, I think I need a different kind of grass because grass, it's not just grass. A fence is not just a fence with a small entry or maybe with barbed wire or maybe with some wood, whatever. So this is what happens in the review, right? So imagine then that the workers, right, the garden guys, they made some mistakes. Maybe one of the guys is a junior gardener and he always comes late and stuff like that. Why would we as the workers, why would they want to, well, discuss how they work? Why would they want to do that? I mean, what's the point of discussing the team? Yeah, but this is what we did in the review. In the review, we talked about how the garden is going. But then there's another thing that we do in Scrum, which is the famous retrospective. The thing is, I mean, imagine that we do a mistake. Imagine there's this guy and he's working on the fence, and it's messed up, right? And imagine then the next week they're working on a different part of the fence. Why? And if we did not reflect upon the mistakes that we did, aren't we like condemned to doing the same mistakes? And that's the point of a retrospective. We don't want to repeat our same mistakes again. That's all. Basically, these are the basic elements of Scrum, right? You have this. Let's color this here with green. This is our plan, if you want to, right? But the thing is, we don't have actually a plan. These are the features of the product that we want to develop. And features, it's not a plan. It's an expansion of that vision, right? So this is one thing that we have this high level plan, but then we have a small level plan, right? A short-term plan. And this is the one that we developed that the team makes at the very beginning. They make a plan like, okay, I like to draw the plan as a bucket, right? So whatever fits into the bucket, you know, for example, the fence fits, and maybe also the water fountain. And that's like the capacity, and that's the container of the work for that week. And in Scrum, work is done in iterations, or it's done all the time again. So you have this cycle then, right? So after review and after learning our mistakes and improving on that, we do the whole thing again. And so we have these elements. You have this high-level plan, and then you have this short-term plan here, which is sprint backlog. And that's it. And then obviously, imagine if you are working construction, if you're creating a product, when you're building something or coding, what will you do in the morning with your team, right? You want to coordinate, right? Say, well, what are we going to do today? Oh, we're going to work. We are going to collaborate on the fence. So it makes sense for these guys to huddle and then coordinate stuff. Imagine that someone starts working on the fence, and at the end of the week, he realizes, it's the wrong direction. So this is really, this is the idea. Let's get together and see what we're doing, so that we can achieve, because the client is waiting for the results at the end of the week. And that's it. So you have this meeting each day. It's a daily Scrum. Scrum, it's daily Scrum. It's 15 minutes, right? And this is when the team inspects the progress. So the interesting thing is, if you look at this, let's think about who are the developers. So, I mean, we have the team, and there's the guy that, the gardeners, right? The guys who literally make their hands dirty on the product. So these are the guys. And who is the product owner then? Is there a product owner? Let's think about all this stuff as simply as possible. If you look at how Scrum was born, in the beginning, there was no product owner. Imagine that. So imagine in the context of the gardening, right? Imagine I am product owner. I am the client, right? I see the guys working there, and I am thinking like, I think they're doing it wrong. So I, as a client, I go to Jose and I say, Jose, I don't like that color. Change it. I don't want it brown. I want it yellow. And send the guy. Okay, change it in. And then there comes my wife, maybe, and she said, no, but I like it red. And she goes, and the poor gardener, he has to change to, and it goes all the time like that. I mean, have you seen that in IT? Right. And this is why the product owner role is born. Because the product owner says, like, okay. And in the beginning, it was a developer. And it's kind of like one of the developers, they sacrificed herself. Why? Because, well, we have to do something with the client, because if we don't put a person to talk to the clients, we won't get any piece to work.
That's true.
So one of these guys here is the product owner then. Like, you know, someone who is, and that's how that role evolved. Usually it can be someone who in the beginning was also developers working together. So
that makes sense.
The important thing is a Scrum team is one unit, and it's a whole team responsibility. So you don't have actually a hierarchy in a Scrum team. And this is something where people really struggle with, because like the corporate view is that you have to have a boss in everything. But in Scrum, it's revolutionary, because it does say, no, we don't need this. It's actually having a hierarchy in a small team can be hampering. That can be not good, right? And why is that? The thing is that when we are creating something, and we need a full collaboration for that. In Scrum, so the roles that emerged, we have 3 roles. We have product owner. Let me share this here. So we have the product owner. I like to draw with a little crown, because that's a person that is leading from the product perspective. Yeah, but listen carefully to my words. Leading on behalf of the product. So that's the person that makes sure that they are focusing, that the team is focusing on the right product. So in our case, we're talking about the garden, right? So that's a product owner who wants to make sure that the whole Scrum team is working on the important stuff, on the right stuff. And this is why the product owner will be talking to me. Are you sure that you want a brown fence and not a green fence? And tries to figure out what is really important for me. Like, okay, and how important is the water fountain? I say, oh, it's really important to me because it reminds me of the good old days. But then he might say, yes, but it's expensive. So just be aware of that. If you have one water fountain, you could have you could have a patio in the middle of that. Just think about this. And I might come to the realization that, yes, according to the vision that we have, a water fountain might not be the right thing, right? So the product owner will have this intense dialogue with all the stakeholders to make sure that we actually creating the right product. So, and then now comes the really important guys. These are the product developers. So these are the guys, right, that actually create the product. And the word is, I deliberately use the word product developers, because there is very much confusion in IT. People think like, oh, when Scrum talks about developers, they think about coding programmers. And that's the wrong message. We're talking about really people making their hands dirty. So when we talk about the garden, these are the guys that, right? They water and whatever they do. There's guys that know how to cut, and guys carpentry, and there are guys, with plants. It doesn't matter. If your hands are dirty, you are a developer. And that means in IT, we're talking about QA guys. We're talking of BA, business analysis, whatever is needed to create the product is, and the thing is, Scrum doesn't have roles actually, but what is important are the skills. This is important. So if the team needs business analysis skills, then someone should join the team who has these skills, or someone learns it, or there will be a train and all these things, you understand? So this corporate role of QA and BA and all that, it's not really important because you don't have this structure in a Scrum team, of course, but what's important to focus on are the skills. And that also means you don't have hierarchies inside such a team, right? So developers, they have a leadership role, and I'm talking about a collective leadership. It's a dynamic, it's a liquid leadership role to develop the product right. So let me write some product right. So that means they take responsibility for quality. So the Scrum team as a whole is responsible for delivering products that the clients love, right? That's what we want. And it's not just delivering like, oh, it's a feature factory. It's like, oh, they're churning out code. We're talking about product development. You know, think of it like discovering a new product. That's where Scrum is really strong. It's where we have where we can explore the complexity of things. Because when you create something new, you need creativity. It's not like just a conveyor belt kind of work. And this is why we need these two important characteristics of such a team. We need self-management and cross-functionality. So if you look at this, you have someone who makes sure that the right product is developed, and then we have a whole bunch of people making sure the product is developed the right way. So, and you look at this at the artifact level, you have the list of these things that need to be done, things that are needed for the product. So, and then you have the guys who are able to turn things from these lists, so ideas, right? They turn ideas into concrete versions of the product, right? And the framework is iterative, so they're able to deliver a stream of versions, right? And now tell me, what is missing here? Is there something missing? Is there actually something missing? I mean, you have someone who makes sure that really they're focusing on the right thing. And then you have the guys who actually build this. I mean, isn't that enough? What do you think? Yes, in a perfect world, if these guys really are harmoniously working, what do we need then? Do we need a Scrum Master? If this is working, if the team is really working effectively, you shouldn't need a Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master, the focus of the Scrum Master, like say, so we have like the third perspective here of the Scrum Master. You know, it's someone who makes sure that the team is able to be effective, right? Can the team actually work? So that's a role, it's an enabler role. So, and if you look at, I mean, if you look at the gardening example, if the team really knows itself and they are really working together a long time and they're experienced and they know how to do these things, maybe you wouldn't need something like Scrum Master, right? But if you look in the corporate setting and corporate world, where people are not really used to working in a self-managed way, because people are used to working in silos, right? You have a test department, you have a business analysis department, and then you have a coding department, then you have operations department. So corporate world has kind of forced people to forget how to really collaborate. And this is why we need a Scrum Master to help find back the way back to that old way of working again. Just kind of as a group, let's say an intimate group of people working very closely together. This is like a very original way of working, right? And so Scrum Master is someone who teaches Scrum, helps the organization to understand the necessity of such a team. They need a space where they can actually be self-managed, right? And to help them to become cross-functional so that they can, in each iteration, deliver something that actually can be usable by the clients, right? So this is kind of a very non-technical kind of view of Scrum, right? Let's talk about the content of CSD. So imagine the technical challenge. Let's go maybe to coding stuff. Imagine, so what would be like a typical length for a sprint? How many weeks is your sprint? So let's say 2 weeks, and then you have the stuff in the backlog. Maybe let me draw a little bit again. I like the product backlog. If you look at the backlog, what is the backlog? The backlog is, I mean, people make it so mystical, but it's trivial. It's a list, right? So let's not talk about Jira and stuff like that. It's really a simple list. And it just kind of lists what are the features that are needed, right? It's features of a product, or it's behavior that we expect, right? So it's a list. So we have these things here. Okay, but if you look at how does a backlog, how is it born, right? I mean, it has to start somewhere. And it basically starts the same way it happens with the gardener. Someone says, usually you start with this product vision, right? We say, okay, we envision a product that solves a pain for the user or delivers some value. There is a desire, something that you want to give the users. And that basically means, okay, you break this down into features. Features, what is just a feature? It's just a big rock, like a big thing that has to be implemented so that it can actually deliver the value. So you can look this. So if you look at a backlog, how it is born and how it evolves, you see basically, I like to draw, you know what it is? An iceberg, right? So let's say you start with a vision, and I put the vision here into the bottom. The vision of the product idea even. And you say, okay, and then you have this meeting with your stakeholders, and then you do some ideation stuff, and they come up with a list of things they need. Oh, we need this, then we need that, and also this and that. It's basically a list of ideas. So you could put these ideas here. Okay, we have an idea here, another idea, right? And imagine now, and you have, so the product owner will focus on making sure that the most important thing will be worked on first. So we say, okay, this one is the most important one, right? So this is the one we're working on. And now let's talk about the challenge. The challenge is the following. And I like to draw this. Let's say we have, this is our bucket of the developers, right? And they have to take this and build something that actually works. Actually works. It means it has to be something that delivers value for the client. In the gardening example, I mean, I understand what a fence is, right? But I don't understand what, like, I don't know what a technical thing is like the soil with fertilizer stuff. I don't know anything about that. So what the developers have to deliver is something that the user can use. And that makes it difficult because imagine to speaking in pictures. Imagine this here. I have this feature. To develop it so that it actually delivers value, it should, does it fit? Does it fit? Tell me. It doesn't. It's too big. That's the biggest first challenge that you have with the developers. And if you look at this, like it's like an iceberg. So what is necessary for solving that problem is to work with the whole Scrum team to take these big rocks, right? Let's take this, let's take this rock here and say, okay, how can we make this thing small? Well, that's the first question. So do you, as a Scrum Master, can you teach your developers splitting techniques? Do you know how splitting has to happen?
No.
And that's the thing that we teach in CSD. For example, to be able to split such a thing in a way, basically you have, if you look at a feature like a cake, let's draw a cake like that. And you want to split a cake. You want a piece of cake. For a user eats the cake like vertically, and the user doesn't eat the cake horizontally. So to translate this in technical terms, when you have we have to discuss architecture here, because let's say our cake, our product has an internal structure, right? Maybe like this, layers, maybe. Depends on your software, depends on your design, it depends on your architecture. Your product must be layered somehow. But this is like, that's a technical decision. That's just the responsibility of the developers. So, and then we have this first big trap. When you ask like non-experienced developers, how would you split this? You know how they would do this? Any ideas? How would they split this? If you have, for example, you have a front end. This is front end, and this is back end, and then you have some middleware. How will you split this? What do you think? What's the naive way of splitting? When we have a technical product, imagine that's your product. And imagine that's your architecture. You have a front-end architecture here, right? And you have your middleware somewhere here, and then you have like database layer, something like that. So what's the danger? How should you not split this? So this is the naive way of splitting. You say, okay, let's do the first sprint, let's do the front end. And then the second sprint, let's do the back end, right? And the problem is we need to deliver something each sprint that is really something of value. If I deliver only the front end, that does not represent value for the user. And that makes splitting really something that we have to learn well. So how do you split this? Well, the thing is you have to split this at user stories. And that means that you're splitting by the business perspective. So you're basically splitting like that. We have to split by business. So that basically means, if you translate this to technical terms, we have to split this in a way that you have a little bit of front end, a little bit of back end, a little bit of middle layer, right? So it's kind of like cutting through the cake. So this is one, and this is really not easy in the beginning, right? So we have to understand as developers. So as a Scrum Master, if I can teach this is of great value. At least I have to understand the challenge. I personally see this as an asset, as Scrum Master, that you understand the challenges of your developers. right? And okay, let's see another point. So this is one aspect in the CSD, how to understand how to split these things. And then we have another problem. We have, if you look at what we see here, for example, team dynamics, right? So we touched upon the fact that we don't have these fixed roles. We have a bunch of people and they have to collaborate. And that means to take joint responsibility. So for the coders, that means we have to take on certain testing tasks, and we need to develop a testing mindset. Testing changes because quality has become so important now, because we need to be able, imagine only, if we are truly agile as a team, we should be able to put things into production at the end of each iteration. Can you imagine what high level of quality that means? So that means that we have to understand, we need to rethink testing. And this is why one of the big topics in my training is testing. So here we're talking, here's one example of splitting exercise. Here's an example of talking about architecture, because we need to deliver architecture in pieces. What is a good architecture, right? So we talk like microservices and stuff like that. So when we talk about quality, we have to talk about code reviewing. We need to understand what is coding, what's quality code, right? And we talk about clean coding techniques and taking responsibility as developers for our code. We need to talk about technical depth. And this becomes so central in agile ways of working because of that high demand of quality, right? We cannot postpone quality because we have this ambition to be able at least to work towards to being able to put things into production like each sprint. And that means we need new techniques of collaboration. And one way of collaborating, which is extremely effective, is pair programming. And people sometimes think that's black magic. No, it's not. It's a really natural way of working. Sometimes you just have to try it out and do it. And so what I do in the training, I take you by the hand and say, okay, let's do this. A simple thing. Let's try out pair programming. And we have some simple programming exercises, and where each one chooses the technology stack that he or she is comfortable with. So we have this technology for that. So you can use Java and JUnit. You can use Java and Cucumber. So we are all different kinds of, we can JavaScript, whatever, Python, whatever you want. And so we need to learn like test-driven development, some new techniques. And we also show that how it works. And then it's another thing, which is behavior-driven development. So here we come to talk about the things that BA guys know a lot about. So how do we specify a certain behavior that we expect from our software? So we're talking about, TDD on business level. And this is a really powerful tool, right? You see, so a Scrum team needs to have all the skills to be able to deliver that product in each iteration. And of course, in the beginning, you don't start with all that. But so, and my ambition in my training course is to show you the beginning of each of these aspects, right? So testing. So we need to talk about unit testing, for example. Okay, how do you write a good unit test? And let's start by writing a simple one. That's good enough for the beginning. And how would you do the same thing now, the TDD way? And then say, okay, that testing basically means specifying what you want. And so we turn things around. Okay, let's start by specifying first what we expect, and then we code accordingly. So these are all these things. And then also continuous integration and continuous deployment. Why is continuously integrating so important? Because this is all about quick feedback that we need, right? And these are all these things that we need in a team. And if you as a Scrum Master, you can support your team, at least to know where you want to go with that team, this is extremely valuable. So in my training, I regularly have Scrum Masters who want to understand better their developers, and of course the different developers. So developers who want to start, how can I make sure that I test the right way in a Scrum team? And sometimes also, you know, many guys that think they know how to work in a Scrum team, they might be surprised how little Scrum they actually know. That can be eye-opening. And I mean, the problem is that many Scrum trainers, if they don't come from the technical part, they have difficulties to support the team. So if you've never done TDD, do you know how to teach it? Can you help the team on their first steps on that? And also the DevOps stuff, right? So that can be helpful. But the focus is basically it's on the developers. You know, if you have these training courses for Scrum Masters, you have these training courses for product owners. My God, we need also training course for the developers. Don't underestimate these things. Yeah, but it's a training, it's about techniques for developers. But I think it might be valuable for you too as a Scrum Master, because you will really understand what the technical, practical challenges are. And sometimes this can be eye-opening to understand what are all the different tasks, technical tasks that are necessary to deliver something of quality in such a short time. Yeah, but the focus is it's for the developers. So we have, for example, testers, and they would like to understand how do I fit in a Scrum team, right? Or UX guys. Oh, how do we fit into a Scrum team? And UX guys, I've noticed that these are the guys that are, because they have this thing, they have this the focus on the user experience. So they think things, they know how to think from the perspective of the user. And they understand also that product development also means product discovery. And in a Scrum team, we are constantly trying to discover the product that is being built. So these guys, they profit a lot about understanding how the whole Scrum team works together, right? Yeah, but so to understand really the perspective of a product owner, we have these CSPO trainings, right? And but if you look at in a Scrum team is considered to be really one team only, and that's the most interesting aspect of a Scrum team. And this is where corporate has difficulties, right? Because corporate thinks in hierarchies. And usually when you come from the traditional approach, you have a product manager usually, right? A product manager typically, right, is someone who has usually like quite a bit of authority, right? And usually only focuses on strategic aspects and does not invest time into the operational or the technical stuff. And that's one of the big differences in a Scrum team with a product owner, because the product owner is working on visionary level, right? Helping the client to discover the vision, but also on strategic level by thinking in releases, right? Trying to envision a sequence of releases, but it's also very, this is very speculative, all that. right? But then you also work on a tactical level because as a product owner, you manage that list of work, the product backlog. So you are really hands-on as a product owner. And you're also like, you're even operational, if you like, because you're writing, the items in the backlog. So you're working on all these levels. It's really, you're cutting through all the work for the product. And that makes it really different because you are within the Scrum team as a product owner taking all the responsibility. You're not just like outsourcing responsibility, saying like, oh, I'm doing the thinking and you boys, you do the working, right? This is what like the traditional way like management is all about. I mean, where it comes from, traditional management is like that. You have the white collar guys, right? The engineers and all these guys, they do the thinking. And when you think back at Ford, the conveyor belt stuff, and back in the times, you had the workers and with the blue collar guys, and they were not really educated. So you had these two classes, white collar, blue collar. And they say like, okay, we do the thinking, you do the doing. And Scrum breaks with that kind of tradition. You have one team where the whole team takes responsibility and the whole team does the thinking. It's not like, and this is why there's not really hierarchy. And that's something that might be tough to establish something in an organization, right? You have to create kind of a safe space for that. And this is why Scrum Master is important for that, to help the organization to understand this and help to make the organizational changes that are necessary, right? And so, for example, if you want to establish a Scrum team, you need a product owner. And so you grab one, so that's product owner. Then you have to grab on all these developers, and they should not be structurally like being, he or she should not be the line manager of these guys, because then you have a hierarchy. And hierarchies make it, it makes it more difficult. It doesn't help self-management, right? And it doesn't help with one of the very basic principles of Scrum, which is the transparency aspect, right? If you are all peers, then it's easier to collaborate and to criticize each other. But if you're not peers and you have like the big peer and the small peers, it's difficult to criticize the big peer. Like, oh, dear project or product manager, you're writing shitty user stories. You will not say that. But to your colleague, you will say, oh, your code looks like shit. That's okay. Well, we are colleagues, so we can kind of fight it out and it's no harm done, right? But you cannot do that with your boss because, oh, my job depends on being on good terms. And this is also, the things about team collaboration. I am, of course, exaggerating a little bit, or maybe like exaggerating. But the point is, that's really the point. How can you really collaborate, right? If you cannot really trust. So the team dynamics have to change also. You cannot, if you ever seen how a Scrum team, when they really are gelling and they are really working, they talk very a lot and they collaborate a lot and they laugh a lot. And it's the atmosphere that you experience in such a team is different from like the corporate team. Where everybody's very polite and it's all a sign. People don't talk so much. It's a different dynamic. And so as Scrum Master, you need to understand these things. You need to understand a lot of psychology. You need to understand about coaching. You need to understand about working with people. So that's why Scrum Master is very much a people-oriented position, if you like. DevOps, you might have heard of the DevOps movement or DevOps philosophy and all that stuff, right? And where does DevOps come from? It has a sharp relation. It has a relationship with Scrum or with the Agile and with agility. DevOps is you have, you know, when you come from, let's say, how does it work in a very waterfall organized organization? You have a development team, right? Developers, and they code a lot of things. And whenever they think it's done, they throw it over a wall into the operations team and they catch it and say, okay, so that's the thing I have to put into operations. Okay. And then they put it into operation. But they're different teams, right? And there is a conflict because developers, they want to develop as many features as possible. So they want a lot of change. On the other hand, operations people, they want stability because they want that the system's running smoothly. So they do not want to rock the boat. And so this is kind of a fighting. So these are departments that really have different objectives. The first one wants change, the other one, they want stability. So they invent kind of bureaucracy, and that really was harmful for the organizations. So, and this is when the DevOps movement was born. So basically it means to have the developers and operations work together. It's a common objective. And that basically means that the developers should become responsible for operating the things that they develop. So there should not be a division. And if you look at this from, let's say, a Scrum perspective, it basically means that the Scrum team needs to have DevOps skills. So the team needs to learn that stuff. So the team needs, if you can translate this in technical tools, you could say, okay, the team must be able to automate testing, for example. It's about automation. And it's about automation to put things into production. It's taking responsibility of operations, basically. And it's taking responsibility of security also. So you don't want to have things that like an afterthought. Oh, let's develop things and later on I do testing, or later on I think about production. Because from a Scrum perspective, we want to put things into production each two weeks, for example. So we cannot outsource this. And this basically means to take on the knowledge and the skills from operations, right? So it's basically creating a much more cross-functional team. So DevOps is kind of part of the Agile philosophy. You cannot really do, at least for IT companies, you cannot really do Scrum without thinking about DevOps also. So you naturally will start, the team will naturally start learning to automate, learning to do all these things that the DevOps guys do, right? So we talk about this in the CSD training too, because this is what we call like the principle of continuously integrating.
Right.
So we want to. So whenever we build a product, it basically means that all the work has to be done on that product to put this into operation. It means also DevOps work. And we want to have feedback as quickly as possible. And that means technical things like, okay, we need a code repository. We need an integration server. We need to, and then we're talking about different kinds that there are, but this is the basic thing. And you can think about, okay, that also implies to reflect upon things like what are our branching strategies? What are the pros, the advantages, disadvantages, and so forth, and so forth. It's a tough question because you have to know what does the organization really want. Does the organization really understand what the Scrum Master role is? Because there's so much confusion about that. because nowadays many organizations confound the Scrum Master with the project manager. So make sure that you understand what the organization wants. That's the big challenge. So that would be really the challenge. But let's assume it's really a real Scrum Master role. What are the basic, I like to call it the tool set of a Scrum Master. So as a Scrum Master, your role is to enable your team to perform, right? So, and that means basically to take that team on a journey to becoming really good. And it means not making the team dependent on you. Your goal is to be like the gardener example, that in the end, they are so good, they don't need you. And that's your goal. Okay, what are the tools that you need to master as a Scrum Master? Imagine that if you have a team and they are totally naive about Scrum, so never really done this. So you should be able to teach it. You must be good at Scrum. You must be a master of Scrum. This is really the word Scrum Master. You need to be the master of Scrum. Really deep understanding of it. So, and then not just understand this, but you must be able to communicate and teach this. So, for example, a tool might be visual facilitation, to be able to draw on a flip chart and explain things. That's a tool that you as Scrum Master can use, and it'd be really valuable. It's a communication tool. So that's one thing. Then the next thing is that people often say, yeah, the Scrum Master is a facilitator. Yes, that's true. So Scrum Master knows about facilitation. What is facilitation? Facilitation is to help a team to have productive meetings. Because if a team does not know how to collaborate, it does not know how to listen to each other, they talk about over each other's mouths. They just talk and don't listen, right? It's like a bunch of kids. They don't know how to play together. So but facilitation. So you teach them, you help them, their tricks, brainstorming with stickies. That's just facilitation. Time boxing, structuring a meeting, like, okay, that's the agenda and whatnot. But that's also just something that with time you teach the team so that they don't depend on you. So that's the second toolbox. So one is teaching or training, the second one is facilitation. Then it gets tricky. So then is another one, it's called mentorship. To be a mentor, this is when you as a Scrum Master, this is one of the big tools that you share experience and you guide people, a team or even people or individuals on their path. And you can also teach and mentor, for example, on a technical level. So for example, if you know how to pair program, or if you know how to practice TDD, then you can mentor them by doing it together. But then you must be able to do this. And this means that you need technical experience. So I can mentor you on that. But other Scrum Masters, they cannot. They don't have the experience. So you cannot. So that's something, if you can mentor. That's another tool that you can use to develop a team or an individual. And then you have, and now comes really the big one. So what's the last big gun that we have as Scrum Master? Let's see, let's hear it, guys. What's the big gun? If you want to help people to get really on the next level. Yeah, coaching. So coaching, that's the thing. Coaching is, it's a way of, kind of way of guiding for people to think better, to work smarter and not harder. And that's a big toolbox that you can use as a Scrum Master, is to accompany a team to help them solve their problems by themselves. And this is really helping them to develop their thinking, if you like, right? Explore together options with them so that they can make their decisions. And it's not your decisions as a Scrum Master, as a coach, but it's their decisions, and you help them in that thought process, right? And this is what you can do. This is basically what you do as a Scrum Master. Yes, but this is only something if the organization knows what a Scrum Master is. If they think that it's basically a project manager role, then you have to tailor your answers, right? If you want to work in that organization in the first place. So many companies, if you look at their advertisement, they say, oh, we need a Scrum Master / project manager. It's the / profession position. We need a Scrum Master / coordinator, whatever. So they often think that you need someone to motivate the team. And it's kind of, sometimes they see it like an expensive secretary, like moving the stickies and managing the Jira and things like that. So this just shows a really deep misunderstanding of the role. Well, the thing is, I think that's my personal opinion. You cannot really impose these things on an organization. I mean, imagine you are, put yourself in the shoes of the guys, of the owners of the organization. Maybe they want it like that. Imagine you are the owner, and then and then you want to hire a Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master says, oh, you have to change this and that. And if it's your organization, why would you want that? So what you can do as a Scrum Master, and this is, it's a long-term thing. It's not a thing that you can change easily. We're talking change management here. We're talking change. How do you introduce change in an organization? So depends on, of course, always is its context in the organization, but you have to think about a strategy of change. And as a coach, you might engage these leaders and try to understand, why do they want to change that in the first place? Why do they want Scrum? Sometimes they just have a very shallow understanding of agility. Very often they think, oh, it's just doing things faster. So you can help them discover that. Right? You can just ask, why do you want to do this? I mean, this is an investment. What do you think is the benefit? And this is really, and now we're talking coaching. And the thing is, you can only coach if they want to be coached. You cannot impose coaching. Coaching is voluntary. It's not like a magic, manipulative, black magic thing. Right? So you can try to show the results of what they are doing, of what happens, right? Try to make it visible. And you can in small steps try to lead by example. Let's see, if a very good argument is success. If you're with your team, you can deliver faster, better, with more quality. And that's something that people might be interested in. It's really tough because the thing is, Scrum is kind of it's a menace for middle management, especially because many managers, they don't really add value. It's tough to say so, but if you look at it from the lean perspective, right, the product being built, what is the value that you actually contribute to the product? And I mean, if you look, I had this example, there was one team, and there's this company that wanted to turn to Scrum, and they put a project manager inside the Scrum team. So it's like there's a Scrum team with a project manager, and she thought that she was like essential for the team. So I asked her, so what is it what you really are contributing? And she said, oh, I have to coordinate them because they cannot do this by themselves. Right, so but are you sure? Why do you think they cannot contribute? Why can't they coordinate themselves? There is no really answer. The thing is, like, it's always been like that, but it's very difficult to tell a person like that, yeah, but your work is not needed. So that's tough. And so it's not something that you can decide as a Scrum Master. You don't have the power for that. You can only advise the organization. Your hands are tied because as Scrum Master, you don't have power. By definition, you don't have it. So you can try to help. So you have two spheres of influence that you need to work on inside the team, right? Help the team to develop. And this is something that's like the impediments in the beginning, they are inside the team, right? But then you will turn outside the team and towards the organization. And yeah, so later on, your work will be usually more outside of the team, like the organizational stuff, right? How does HR understand what they are doing? Do they understand the influence of their politics on Scrum teams, right? Bonuses and stuff like that. How you cannot really use the old tactics. You need to rethink this, and then you have to help, for example, sales and finance. They have to understand how a Scrum development works, how agile product development works. You can start involving these guys. They're all stakeholders, so make sure they understand the stuff and put them in the review so they really see what's happening. So it depends so much on your context, right? Okay, guys. And so thank you for your time, your attention. And I hope to see you soon again. So we are going to have these webinars on a regular basis. And I hope, of course, to see you in one of my trainings. That would be really cool to explore Scrum really with all the nitty-gritty details. Okay. See you then. Bye-bye.